In today's video, I'm going to share with you 5 hidden sources of anxiety and stress that once you learn to identify, reduce or eliminate, can drastically speed up your recovery process. Hi and welcome back to Mental Health Power. So just like in my previous videos where I went over other potential sources that can contribute to depersonalization and anxiety, I thought today I'd do the same for anxiety and stress. So one of the big ones that I learnt about was our environment. So by environment, I mean your local environment and the greater environment. So this means your home, your rooms, the neighborhood you live in, the city you live in, that kind of thing. But the ones that we have the most control over are the places where we live. And I think this is generally quite well known. I think phrases like a tidy home equals a tidy mind are quite well known. And there is so much truth to this. And if you're ever feeling stressed, if you're ever feeling like you have quite high levels of anxiety, one of the things I found has always helped was tidying up, clearing things out, and also just maintaining even your desk space. Try and keep it as organized as possible. But what I think isn't really spoken about is why specifically this works so well and why you need to do this repeatedly over time. And it's simply to do with the act of repetition. So every time we do something and we repeatedly do it, or we think something over and over again, this is influencing our subconscious mind. And I go over this in my other videos on depression, anxiety, and depersonalization. But what this means is, because we either consciously or unconsciously assign meanings to things, if every day we come home and we see an untidy room, or we go to work and we see an untidy desk, there's a meaning we are unconsciously assigning to ourselves. And when it comes to anxiety and stress, really, anxiety and stress are all about fears of ultimately forms of chaos or losing something. So it's often to do with fearing that we're going to lose control because it's ultimately going to lead to pain and suffering. That's what at least the fear makes us believe that it's going to lead to. And so if you have an untidy environment, well, that is the beginning of that chaos. And so what we're doing is repeatedly, through the act of keeping untidy environments, is we're essentially telling ourselves there's a lack of control, there's a lack of control. And so once you start tidying these things up, that's a way for you to, especially when it's done over time, repeatedly show yourself, I am gaining control, I have control. Where there was the beginning of some element of chaos, I am now being in control of that and I'm creating order. And this also applies to the areas you live in. So if you live in an area that's really noisy, really messy as well, again, there's the element of chaos and all the implications that are there too. So if you keep seeing mess and living in a messy, noisy neighborhood over and over again, apart from the fact that it's just not a peaceful experience, there is the element of there's always a certain level of chaos being around you. And when you have that repeatedly over time, it just contributes little by little to extra stress and anxiety. And so the next one I think is one that's not really spoken about too much in relation to anxiety. So I suggest this is one of the hidden sources of stress and anxiety, which is fearing what others think. So this simply means that a source of anxiety or stress comes from thinking that the opinions of others are somehow more valid than yours, but there's a much more deeper source to this. And this is because it really stems from self-worth. So if somebody has, because of their life experiences, let's say they've had a very difficult life, and let's say then because of this, unfortunately, they now have very low self-worth. What this really means is that their opinion of themselves is really, really low. So they have very poor self-image. So what this means is that when they hear the opinions of others, or if they start to understand the opinions of others, they then place more importance on other people's opinions of them. So instead of that person themselves forming their own opinion of themselves, forming their own identity and self-image that's healthy, because it's so low, everyone else's opinion or other people's opinions appear to be superior. And so what's happening is, when someone does have a fear of what other people think, this means that the real fear is not actually what other people think, but that their own poor self-image will be confirmed. So their own really negative opinions of themselves will be confirmed. So the fear is that what they perceive to be the truth of themselves is confirmed. But this is mostly happening in the subconscious. So it's happening in the back of their mind and they don't realize it. But this can then subtly guide people to avoid certain situations and certain things because of this fearing what other people think, because of the low self-worth that's occurred through no fault of their own, because they're avoiding that distorted sense of truth of themselves being confirmed. And the next biggest source, which I don't think is a surprise to see this here, it was in my other video, is that the news and the media is a big source of stress and anxiety. But I think there is a hidden aspect to this because it's hidden in plain sight. Now, the reason is that, and I mentioned this in other videos, that there is a perception that the news and the media is the truth, instead of it being a perspective on the truth. And there is a big difference, because once we have this second mindset that, okay, we're being presented a perspective of the truth, this significantly can reduce stress and anxiety, because so much of the news is just selling us fear and anger. It's really just grabbing our attention through the fear and the anger, because that's their job, right? They are a business, as I mentioned in my other videos, that the news corporations are businesses, so their ultimate goal is to make money, and they make money by ensuring that our attention is grabbed as much as possible. And so if we can limit the news, limit the media. So for example, I don't watch TV, I haven't done for years, and I don't watch the news. I read things, so that way I have the control over it. And so this already can significantly drop the amount of anxiety and stress someone can experience in a day. I know it's not possible for everyone, because for some people they have to read the news because of their work, for example. But at the very least, you want to minimize what you're reading and where you're reading it and how you're reading it. So I mentioned in the video, the last one I did, where one of the worst things you can do is the first thing you do when you wake up is start reading the news, because then you'll immediately, as your mind is still waking up from the sleeping state, you're immediately feeding your subconscious with negativity, with things that are going to make you feel stressed and anxious just as you start the day. And so at the very least, you want to put that off for at least an hour or two if you can, so that you feed your mind with better things first in the morning. Then, okay, you can look at the news. But always have that perspective that you're being given a perspective on the truth, because I don't have to say how many times we've seen the news blow things out of proportions, then we discover what's really going on and it's not quite what they've said, and they never come back to correct themselves. It's just what they do, right? They've done it for years. Now the next one is a really, really big one, and I think this is a massively hidden one in terms of being one of the 5 hidden sources of anxiety and stress. And it's the existential crisis. So what I mean is, this is a state of mind that at some point anyone can come across. I had this for, I think, years and years, almost non-stop, because I experienced depersonalization symptoms for so long. And really, it's a state of mind where you've experienced and feel that there's no meaning to your life, that you have no purpose, and that because of this, you'll basically never be able to be happy. And of course, you can see why this is stressful, because we all want to be happy. Everything that we ever do is to move us away from suffering, or to move us towards happiness, or what we believe will enable us to do that. And so if for various reasons, it'll be different for everyone, if you have this either conscious belief or unconscious belief, again, it's in your subconscious, in the back of your mind, that there's no meaning to what you do, that life is pointless, that you have no purpose, ultimately, what that's highly likely to make people end up fearing is that they will never reach fulfillment and never reach happiness. which of course is going to make them feel stressed, because it's almost like they'll feel like they're dead already, or that there is literally no way they can stop suffering. That is basically what I experienced for so long while I had depersonalization, because it completely strips any possibility at the time of experiencing joy until you start doing the work and finding ways to overcome it, of course. But when you're in that state of mind, and some people don't have to have mental health issues to experience this. There can be life experiences, beliefs that they've taken on over their lives that have led them to literally believe that there's no point or purpose to what they do, which ultimately means that for many people, they feel they can never reach happiness. So you can see why this would cause so much stress and anxiety. Is until we become aware that we might have this belief, then we can start changing it. But when we don't, it remains unconscious, so we don't know it's there. And then finally, we have our emotions. So ironically, our own emotions can be a source of stress and anxiety. And this is because as a society, we haven't really been taught how to deal healthily with emotions, or even what they really are. And so because of this, people have emotions, and either they just react to them based on what they're feeling, or they just don't know what to do with it. So we'll have emotions that come up, and then is overwhelming, and sometimes we just turn to coping mechanisms because we haven't been taught what to do with emotions. And so we can have painful emotions, and we can have them repeatedly because, let's say, past traumas are being triggered, and we may never have been taught what to do or what they are. And so either we suppress them unconsciously, which leads to all other kinds of problems, or we invalidate our own emotions, other people do. So emotion comes up and we just say, you shouldn't feel that way. And we find ways to validate that we shouldn't feel that way, or we try and force it away. It will always come back somehow. And so let's say that we do start experiencing overwhelming and strong emotions, but we haven't been taught how to deal with it. So this is then the mind's way of seeing it as a potential threat, because you have a source of pain and you haven't been taught how to deal with it. So again, there's that potential for chaos. And so that's why we turn to coping mechanisms or suppress emotions, because we haven't been taught what to do and how to validate them. And so the common thing in all of these is the repetition, because if we keep experiencing these things repeatedly over and over and over again, either through the emotions, through the thoughts, or through actual experiences, this is just feeding or creating a subconscious belief that we don't have control, and that we cannot trust things or trust ourselves, which are really the root causes of anxiety. And so I found once I started to understand these things and to reduce and eliminate them as much as I could, I started seeing really big improvements in my life and massive reductions in anxiety. So I hope this helps. If it has, comment below, click the like button, and don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.